some people have freckles in their eyes. So these are pigments.
Yeah.
And the color of the pigment, the location of the pigment can tell me, are there toxins in that area? If they're more rusted or orange, it's usually like fungal or bacterial. So then I'm looking at things like blood sugar regulation, candida overgrowth sometimes. And I've noticed a lot of women who are getting those copper IUDs in the ovary and uterine area were having these spots show up. And I was like, were you born with those? And they're like, no, they showed up 5 years ago. I'm like, what happened 5 years ago? So then I get into the sclera, I look at the red lines, and those are more what is going to happen, what is going on now.
Welcome to Under the Sun Podcast. I'm Aileeah.
And I'm Irene. Grab a cup of coffee and your comfiest sweats and join us every Monday as two best friends discuss everything from raising free-range gremlins to business and really everything under the sun.
Let's get started, and thanks for being here.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, whatever day or time
Good evening,
you're listening.
good middle of the night.
Yeah, whenever your children are finally asleep. We have a super awesome guest today that we are so excited about. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do. Give us the little elevator speech.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Nichole Hosein. I own Three Sprouts Holistic, named after my children. I have 3 kids and sprouted them into healthy children through the holistic space. Also the TSH, because my thyroid was a turd, and that's kind of what launched me also into my own health journey. I am known as the eye lady. I look at eyes and I can tell you a lot about your health, and that's what I'm really excited to talk to you guys about today. The iris and the sclera and what that can tell you about your health, or even just genetic tendencies. The eyes can reveal a lot. It's an old practice. And I really have this desire to reignite it for everybody because it's free. Everybody has eyes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And not to jump right in, but the body tells us way in advance something that is going on in our life before we have a huge diagnosis, right? Wouldn't you agree? Because it's so that's what you do is you look at the eye and you can say I listened to you on Ancient Health Podcast, and you talked about certain lines mean could liver dysfunction or blah, blah, blah. It's amazing to me just that our bodies are so they're so emotive, they tell us exactly what they need. We just don't listen anymore. Okay, so I want you to talk to us though we're 5. I don't know if you watch The Office. Tell us we're 5. What's the difference between the scleris, the iris, give us all the isses.
Yeah. And if you have questions, just ask me, but I'm going to dive into a little bit about the iris. So the iris is the colored part. So, it can be brown, or we call it a mixed eye or a blue eye. So a mixed would be somewhere in between. People say, how do I know if I have a mixed eye? Sometimes as people start detoxing, they say, hey, my eyes got a lot lighter, right? So they thought they were brown and then they started fading and suddenly they're hazel or they're green. That would be more of a mixed eye. So in iridology, there's a bit of a discrepancy. Are there 3 eye types or are there 2? Some people think there's only brown and blue. I really think there's a mixed eye type. And sometimes that's, with health, it's peeling back the layers of the onion, right? So the mixed eye type, they're going to have certain genetic tendencies towards pancreatic issues, liver issues. So when they come to me with a mixed eye, and even sometimes the sclera, those red lines can tell me what areas are weakened. So that's what's more actively going on, which I'll get into as well. But the mixed eye type, I look at those areas because a lot of times if they're coming to me, they have something wrong with them, and they're using, their eyes as a way to see what's off. And it's usually one of those areas. The blue eye type has a longer list. So I'm trying to look at your eyes. You have blue eyes, don't you, Irene?
I'm green, but
green. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Sometimes blue-ish if I change my shirt color, but is that a shirt color or is that my innards?
I know. So we're going to look at that.
Okay.
So the blue eye type, they are more prone to, and it's not every person, but if they're a blue eye and if you look in the mirror and there's a lot of those white strings, they're more of a lymphatic type. So, paying attention to sweating, and sometimes they're going to be more sensitive to the gluten and dairy. Lung issues are more common. Kidney, adrenal issues are more common. They generally can be more irritated with their lungs, so taking longer to recover from respiratory stuff. And then the brown eyes, which I have, mineral loss is a big thing. So if we are balancing brown eyes and stress, the mineral loss is huge. And then we start seeing things like endocrine issues. So, thyroid issues are more common in people with brown eyes, heart issues as well, because that mineral depletion impacts the heart. And then I do find a lot of people that have heart issues also have brown eyes. So I studied this. And then for the last 5 years, I've been looking at people's eyes and I'm like, that really does line up with the health issues that they have more commonly, right? And it's not that that's a be all end all. I always look at the eyes and it's very unique to the individual, like a fingerprint. But sometimes looking at them, can help me. What are the areas that might be more weakened? You know, so just from the color of their eyes, I already know what areas I need to focus on. And then you can get into, and I have a chart. It's not the best chart.
I want
but you can go on
if
you're listening to this iridology chart. So iridology is the study of the iris, the colored part. This is what it looks like.
Fun.
So you have your pupil, and then, so if you're listening, you can just understand this as well, but you can look, there's plenty online and they all look similar, different colors. People use different colors or labels. But right around the pupil. So when you're looking in a mirror, you're going to see areas that are a different texture than outside of that immediate area. So you'll have the pupil, a certain texture that's usually more like striped, if you're understanding that.
Yep.
And then a ring, which we call a collarette.
Okay.
And that can tell me a lot about how often you poop.
Okay.
And then outside of that, you have your organs and, you know, your back and your brain. Your brain's usually at the top. And it does mirror a little bit. And then the outside is the skin. So this is where I would see, you know, if there's toxins absorbing through your skin, if you're more likely to hold on to toxins. And so, you know, it's kind of similar where like the thyroid is in towards the nose on each eye. Okay. But that's generally what I follow for the iris. There are charts. They're all, you know, 95% the same. You know, some people will argue is the liver there or the spleen. But just off the bat, I can look at different. Some people have freckles in their eyes. So these are pigments.
Yeah.
And the color of the pigment, the location of the pigment can tell me, are there toxins in that area? You know, if they're more rusted or orange, it's usually like fungal or bacterial. So then I'm looking at things like blood sugar regulation, candida overgrowth sometimes. And then the really cool part that I noticed when I really got into this, the darker ones, the brown and black, are usually more liver related. So no matter where they are in the eye, it's usually the way to get it out of the body is supporting the liver. So that's really cool. And I've noticed a lot of women who are getting those copper IUDs in the ovary and uterine area were having these spots show up. And I was like, were you born with those? And they're like, no, they showed up 5 years ago. I'm like, what happened 5 years ago?
Okay. Yeah.
So the copper buildup from the IUDs was actually showing up in their eyes, which was really fascinating. And over time, the iris takes a long time to show changes. Some of the changes don't happen. You know, on like a lacuna, which here I'm going like way deep.
Go for
Lacunas, if you look in your eyes, they look like little teardrops or flower petals.
Okay.
So those are generally in the organs. If you're blue eye type, for example, if you look
Don't mind me, I'm going to look at my eyeballs.
just around 6 o'clock, there's the kidneys and adrenals. So a lot of people with blue eyes will have a little flower petal shape if they're weakened in that area. So lacunas are genetic tendencies to weakness. It doesn't mean that that's an issue. Again, the blue eyes, I'll find the lacunas in the lungs. So like 9 o'clock on each eye. Well, 3 and 9 o'clock if you're really counting the clock the right way, but on the outer corners.
Okay.
And so these are areas that might be weaker just naturally in your genetics, right? Those don't necessarily change, although I have seen as people age, like the fibers kind of push away and you'll see like a black abyss, you know, or like especially like seniors battling like stage 4 cancer and stuff, the fibers kind of become weakened. Or if that area is inflamed, you might see like the little flower petal with like a white ring around the edges, which is more inflammatory. But that's about all I'm going to notice for those. The pigments can fade, but they can take a long time. Like my mom quit smoking and it took like 10 years to see any of those pigments really start dissipating in the eyes. So is that an accurate depiction of the healing process? Probably not. It's helpful to see chronic things that have been there or you're born with. You know, some people are born with these pigments in their eyes. So then I get into the sclera, which I look at the red lines, and those are more what is going to happen, what is going on now. So, you know, the straight lines are, you know, if you look at your iris, I mean, you can see them in my eyes too. We all have them. And everybody's like, you know, is anybody actually healthy? We're all dealing with stuff. Let's face it, our world is toxic. But there's, you know, and I mean, I don't have the best chart for that. I have a big one on my wall, but I couldn't show you guys.
Maybe send us a picture and we'll share it. We'll put it in it. Like maybe send us a picture and we'll add it in post.
I'll send it to you. Sclerology is a mouthful. Sclerology is the study of the sclera. So if you're looking up, you could like put in sclera chart, it'll probably come up. But sclerology, everybody stutters on that. It's a big word. But looking at the red lines, depending on how they look, it can tell us a lot about your health too. So you know, if we look at, and I mean, it's kind of common sense in that area too, where if it's more red and angry and squiggly, then that's probably something you want to pay attention to. People will be like, I noticed this line pop up in my eye. What's going on? Like back injuries suddenly have this big line in their back area, you know?
And so you said, you know, those pop up sooner than you would notice a change in the iris.
Yes.
Okay.
So that can tell me, you know, so for example, if you have a straight line, just one straight line. We call these simple lines, simple stress lines. So these, you might not have symptoms. Some studies will say that, if that area is not addressed, it might change the way it looks. So a simple stress line will start growing closer to the iris. Closer to the iris is not good. You want them to pull away as they heal.
Okay.
And the sclera, I should say, also shows healing a lot quicker too. So that's kind of my bread and butter. I love looking at the sclera, and not a lot of people do because it's really hard. But the simple lines will get closer to the iris. As they get more problematic, they might fork out. So oftentimes, like the thyroid is right here, and I will see it fork out. So it's like in by your inner tear duct. A lot of people, for some reason now, we're all depleted in minerals. Thyroid starts showing up. Their blood work might be fine, but like in the United States, we have massive selenium deficiency. Our soil doesn't have selenium, and that's something that's really important for the thyroid. So I'm seeing thyroid health pop up more and more. And over time, if it's not addressed, it presents as symptoms, but it will pull up to the pituitary, which is at the top. And that's where your TSH is produced. Sometimes it pulls down to the bottom into the liver, the uterus, the adrenals. So that's where I see more of like a fork pulling energy from other areas. And so those could be signs of like a deeper endocrine fatigue. So it's not just balancing the thyroid, it's looking at, balancing the pituitary and the adrenals and whatever else is involved. Squiggles. So sometimes you'll see that in the heart. So any kind of loop or squiggle, there's congestion. So a lack of movement in that area. And I can see that sometimes in the large intestine, people not pooping, or I see that sometimes in the heart, when people have blood pressure and blockage and stuff, you can see it. That's a little hard to address because I'm like, oh yeah, there's something wrong with your heart, and I'm not a medical doctor. But we gently approach it. You can have pockets. So sometimes even in the bottom of the left eye, there's the large intestine is kind of down here. I'm pointing to my right before the camera. You can have a pocket. And pockets are trapped infections, trapped bacteria. So the body literally will shut that off from the rest of the body. I have seen it up at like in the, the top inner corner is where your dental work might be. So people have mercury fillings and the body's like, I don't know how to deal with that, or a root canal. And suddenly they have pockets up at the top of their eyes. So there's an infection trapped in there. And the body like naturally will protect, by addressing or connecting with that part of the body. The thyroid sometimes too. And I would beg to even look at, I see things show up and maybe it's not symptomatic. There could be an emotion trapped in there too. People go through grief and it's in the lungs, and, their lungs are fine, but then they're holding on to a lot of grief. And I've noticed that they do fade or pull away. And so, the sclera can change in a couple weeks, a couple months, depending on, what the issue is. I had a client who did hypnosis, and she stopped smoking after 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And within a week, her lungs looked so much better. But then people, for me, gradually it's been, a couple of years, and I see changes and I can address them as they go. But, you have the pockets, the squiggles, the simple stress lines, you can get the forks. And one of you asked about the gray lines. There's a bunch of different color in the sclera too. So it's not just the lines. People will have sometimes more of a blue tinted sclera. And that can be connected to like iron deficiency. I've seen that with people who have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the hypermobility. And so that's interesting. You ask, are you very flexible?
What is your
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome? There's a lot of what is it actually? Is it glyphosate in the body? But the hypermobility of the joints, right? So it's
interesting. More that's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
it's not me. It's actually my daughter. I've noticed ever since she was born it's in her, oh my gosh, what do you call the white part of the eye?
Sclera.
I knew that, but my brain wasn't coming up with it. When she was born, she's had like gray, and it fluctuates when it comes out.
Interesting.
On the outside. I can take a picture of it for you because I've wondered that because my husband has it. And again, I would love to hear the backstory of like how you got into this as well, because my husband and I had very different upbringings. I didn't have any jabs. He had every single jab offered. So I detoxed him like one round of detox, like before we got pregnant with her. I had quite a few parasite cleanses and all sorts of, probably a year and a half of detoxing before I got pregnant. But, so I wonder of that connection, but I also see it in my husband's dad's eyes. And
but also on that, both her husband and daughter have like bright blue eyes.
They do.
If that coincides together.
Okay.
Yeah. So interesting. So diagnose it. Give me the skinny.
Well, I can't technically diagnose anybody. Okay.
So
when there's
We have a button that we usually put here. It's one of those buttons you can make your own sound, and we'll punch it, and it says it's our husband saying allegedly.
Yeah,
because they're like, you guys are gonna get us sued. You are not. You can't definitively say we can fix this.
Yeah, so allegedly,
this button says allegedly, and we hit it every time we say something that's
Well, based on the books that I've read and the studies. Okay, so if it is a blue eye, brown eyes can have, and I mean, a lot of brown eyes genetically are from warmer climates. Think about Asian, African. They do have darker eyes, and they are more likely to have, brown patches in their iris or their sclera. See, here I am in the sclera. And that could be completely benign. When it shows up in a blue eye or a mixed eye, green eye, I wonder more about, iron is a big thing, and it could show up in a brown eye and they're anemic too. But if they're more like patches or blotches, I would look at the iron level in the body. And I have read in some studies that if it does show up, it could be some hardening of the liver. Now I'm very curious because you're talking about jabs, which have to process through the liver. So,
but our child has never had jabs, but generationally it has,
Yeah. Are there any freckles in your husband's eyes? No, you need to go stare at him.
No, he has no freckles. I have stared. I listened to your podcast and I was like, let me look at your eyeballs. But I did notice some squiggly lines in his, and I also have my own squiggles. I never thought I'd say that on the podcast, but it's just the gray that is fluctuating in size is what I'm curious. Like I'm curious about that because when she was born, it was really close to her iris, and then it has receded back, and it's sometimes it's really far back, and then sometimes it's closer to her iris, and then I can tell a correlation with the bags under her eyes. So I'm just because I'm a hyper observant mom, I'm trying to I'm definitely not panicking. I know that we can do things to help support her body, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I would be very curious because even with that, say potentially it was iron, right? If their iron is low, and I mean, in my experience in my house, even with my own son and myself, is our iron drops when we eat gluten or we're exposed to gluten. He has celiac, I don't, but I have an allergy to it. So I've noticed that, things will change in our eyes. The other thing that all of my kids ended up with that in their eyes. Last year we lived in a moldy house.
Oh, shoot.
So our HVAC, we're in Florida, was covered in black mold. They moved out. But all of them had these black patches, and I did blood work on them, and all of their hemoglobin was low. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And it was, there is a correlation between mold and iron, or even, food allergies, and if you're eating them and iron dropping. So I wonder if maybe she had an exposure to something that her body couldn't handle and her iron dropped.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Because, we live in central Illinois. Everything is moldy here. We go from freaking winter to summer within 2 days, and so then it's hot, cold, and it rains, and everybody has basements, and you do the best you can with what you have. But we also had this is a long story short, but we, in between moving from our old house to this house, we were in a medium term rental in the city. In the basement, the first time it rained, it was this much water, and we had no place to go. We had nowhere to live, so we were like, okay.
Then you get a tornado warning. You have to go hang out in the basement.
Tornado. So and then there's this much. It's a mess. But don't move here. That's what I'm saying. I'm from Florida, so
but Florida's muggy.
I know, but it's so pretty. At least you have the beach and sand and things to do. Anyways,
I know.
But
we dry out all the mold outside when it's 100 degrees. Just step outside. All goes away. Yeah.
But okay, I'll look into iron, and eventually we'll get a blood work panel on her. I want to just support her body.
You know what? Send me her eyeballs. Let's have a look.
I'll send you her eyeballs.
Well, on that side tangent, do you have any tips for getting, because you said you have 3 kids. Do you have any tips on easing the blood work for the kids? Because my son had to have blood work once when he was younger. He has 2 nodules on his lymph nodes that have been there since he was 2. And we just were concerned for some things. And the blood work all came back normal. So, okay, it's fine. But that was really traumatic for both him and me as his mother. And so,
how did you do blood work with your kids?
For doing blood work, or you just tell them sorry, kid, it's going to happen.
My kids hate it. When we do it, we have to do it. I try to order what testing I can through urine or stool.
Okay, yeah.
But there's times we need to do blood work. Yeah. I didn't know this until recently. I wish I had this when I was a kid. But hemoglobin is now a finger prick. Okay. So I went to the doctor. She's like, I'll just do a finger prick. And I was like, what? She can test it in her office. It's like technology has advanced and you can kind of prepare them for a little finger prick quicker. But blood work, I'm not below hauling in an entire chocolate bar and saying, if you got to get blood work, pick out a chocolate bar.
At that point, I'm like mother of the year. I gave him to my husband and I was like, I can't go. Like, I'm bawling. Like, you're going to have to do it. And so he did it. But I could hear him from the lobby screaming. And I was like, ooh. But he needed it. So, So, okay. Bribery works.
It's
hard.
Yeah.
And the little butterfly needles, I always ask you to use the little butterfly ones because they're smaller needles. So they don't hurt as bad.
Oh, that's good.
But,
what happens if I'm a grown adult and I don't want to get blood work? I'm just kidding.
Do you have a hard time with blood work?
Oh, I almost pass out almost every single time I've ever gotten blood work.
I've had so many random tests around. I'm like, go for it. Tell me what you need
when
to
I was
tell me.
pregnant and they did like whatever blood test when I was still at the birth center. I had to like look away and I literally like sang a song like in my head and it was like because like I just don't like it. I was in the nursing field, so like I could take your blood no problem. I could stab you, which sounds weird, but like I could prick you, but like I don't know, some kind of disconnect. But okay, so then I want to back up real quick. I want to know more of all of the details, but I want to back up. Why iridology? How'd you get here? What brought you here?
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to go on a journey. So I used to be a special education teacher and I worked in a French immersion school. I'm Canadian originally. Kept moving further and further away from it. Now I'm in Florida.
Canada to Florida. Man, classic.
Another podcast.
Okay, so when did you move to Florida?
I moved here a year and a half ago.
Oh, okay. So like fresh Floridian.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I love it here though. But yeah, I left teaching. My son is vaccine injured. And it's not one of those, oh my God, do I think he was hospitalized 2 hours later with encephalitis and seizures and his fever was 108. So, he ended up with severe regression, which they diagnose as autism because when kids don't fit the norm, it's automatically autism, right? Hope that's okay to put on your podcast.
Yeah, of course.
We get canceled all the time.
To back it up.
Yeah.
So, it was, at that point I trusted the medical system, but then they look at you like you're crazy when you say, hey, he just had the shot 2 hours ago and now he's, suddenly sick. Oh, it's a coincidence. It's not possible, So I went back to school. I became a holistic practitioner. And at that point, my husband got a job in New York, upstate New York, not the city. I've never been to the city. So we were in Syracuse and I had to learn to take care of him. So I stopped trusting the medical system. We learned to eat well and, start detoxing him. And, he's still got some issues, but he's no seizures. He talks now. He's doing a lot better. Like he's pretty independent. He's 11 now and he's almost as tall as me.
Oh my goodness.
But he was 18 months at the time. So I got into this holistic field really to help him. And Syracuse is a very small town, and New York also bans a lot of testing. So if you want stool testing, heavy metal testing, you can't do anything there.
So the audacity that they think that they ban it?
Yeah, you can't. Like if you go on to like hair tissue mineral analysis, something simple, you cut your hair and look for minerals. Genetic testing, you can't order anything to New York.
The audacity to be like, can't. If you like, you want to do something outside the medical system, can't. We're gonna ban it.
Yeah,
oh my
You
gosh,
can't do anything. And the thing is, even for like a hair tissue mineral, like you want to look at minerals, like 1% will show up in your blood, right? Or even for heavy metals, they hide in the fatty tissues. So it wasn't a reliable way to look for aluminum toxicity or anything. So, instead of driving to Pennsylvania for every test, I was just like, let me learn to look at people's eyes. It was in my holistic studies practice. And I've always been naturally a very nosy person. So
I love it.
So now I have a better excuse to stare at people. Yeah. It's so hard to have conversations. I'm like, do you ever scratch your butthole? And they're like, what's my name?
Yeah.
See signs of parasites, right?
Yeah.
So it's, we go right into the poop talk very often with strangers.
It's welcome.
I love it.
Yes. Yeah. Poop. Hey, you were in the nursing field. You probably dealt with poop all the time.
All the time. All the time.
The
things I've seen. Things. Yeah. That's for a different conversation.
Yeah. So I started looking at eyes and, I think, COVID was a bit of a blessing because people stopped trusting the medical system and my business exploded. Yeah. People wanted to learn how to heal themselves, protect themselves, get their kids healthy. And I had a soft spot for the kids at the beginning. It's a lot more work having 3 kids because I was also homeschooling. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pack up and move to Florida where I can work and order whatever testing I want, but I still love the eyes. Like for kids that need blood work, I'm like, skip the blood work, send me their eyes. Yeah. Because I can see a lot of what's going on. And I mean, if you're just like, hold still and take a picture, it's a lot easier for the kid than jabbing needles in their arms. You know, a lot of these kids have PTSD from vaccines and stuff, right? So they just are fearful of needles. So it got busy, and, you know, online it just kept growing and growing. And, you know, it's been a blessing because COVID was also really nice because I started working from home. So I was able to pack up and move across the country. And, you know, my kids are in school now, so I can work more.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, not how you got there is awesome, but I'm glad it's all turned around because, like, I think now, which is funny because we see it as a blessing. I see COVID as a blessing because, like, I never really trusted the government or never really trusted the healthcare industry. Well, I kind of did because I was in the nursing field, but like my eyes were quickly opened to like, we just medicate. That's it. I'm not really helping at all, even though that's why I got into this field. We're not. But 2020 was a blessing. But what's funny is like my nephew, who's now 18, he's like, guys, why are we still talking about 2020? That was 4 years ago. And in his 18-year-old life, 4 years is not
a long time.
4 years is a long time ago. But like in us who are older, it's like, no, that tyranny was not that far away, and it's still getting worse. But it's been such a blessing. So that's why we have this podcast, because we want to ask the question. We're like, hey, like talk to us like we're 5, so that like other moms like us can try to, you know, bridge the gap for our kids. Like we just need to be able to be their best advocates. So, okay. So your son was vaccine injured at 18 months. He's 11 now. And you went to school, Iridology. How have you healed him? How has that looked?
Well, initially, you know, this was, 11, he's 11 and a half. It was like 10 years ago almost. I knew his cause, right? So he had all of these deficits, and it was, you know, I was in special education. I worked with kids with special needs. I had autistic kids in my class, and I was like, he was fine. He had no issues. I mean, even my family that's very pro-vaccine was like, something happened to him. So, you know, I totally just lost my train of thought over there because I was thinking about my in-laws are here visiting from Canada right now too.
Oh, nice.
But there wasn't a lot of stuff in this health space 10 years ago. So, you know, I was back on Facebook. What could I find? And when we moved, I went to Pennsylvania. We ordered a hair tissue mineral analysis. His aluminum was off the charts, which is connected to speech delays. It's connected to seizures. And I was like, how do we get rid of this? So, you know, there's a lot of easier options now, but back then I found Andy Cutler, Dr. Andy Cutler, and he does like a low dose chelation, which is a lot of work. You have to get up every 3 hours for 72 hours every week and give like alpha lipoic acid or DMSA. I could get into this, but I feel like that was a pivotal part in helping my son because it helped to bring the aluminum down. And he hasn't had a seizure probably in 8 years. He started talking literally the first couple weeks. So his voice, like, he went from, you know, 18 months, he was like, you know, blue, green, orange, like his colors weren't set right. He knew every dinosaur, all of his colors, his shapes, like what an 18-month child should. And then it was just screaming all day long. He couldn't talk. He would try, and it was just was all that would come out.
Sweetie.
So he started counting like a couple weeks in. I was like, what is this? Like, he's doing amazing. And so we kept going. We did that for about 3 years. And of course, cleaning up the diet. So we actually didn't know that he had celiac. You know, you go online and people, autism, take out the gluten. I took out the gluten. Any exposure, he was so sick. And I was like, is it because I cut it out? So eventually I did testing because he started getting these facial tics when he had exposures. And the neurologist was like, that's classic celiac. So having that removed helped to bring down a lot of the inflammation and the gut issues, which it's so frustrating in this field. Something's wrong with my son. He's got chronic diarrhea. Oh, well, he's autistic. Like, you say that that's like a neurodivergent, like that has nothing to do with his bowels. So he has seizures. Well, it's because he's autistic. I can't tell you how many times the medical field literally just disregarded it and blamed it on his autism. It's not autism. It's vaccine injury. There's a difference. And, you know, they clump them all. Any kid that's not performing neurotypically, they throw them into that and
medicate. They're just like, oh, here's medication. Oh, well, that medication isn't working anymore. Here, let's tack this other one on top. And then So he's, you know, New York was hard because he couldn't go to school. They don't allow any. We have a federal exemption for him. So when we immigrated, he got a federal one New York wouldn't even take. Wow.
So there's no medical, there's no religious, there's no exemptions there at all.
Goodness.
Okay, wait.
So don't move to New York.
So
no, don't.
New York, you cannot send your kid to school unless they're vaccinated.
Yep, 100%.
And you said you have a federal exemption?
they won't take it.
Wow.
The audacity of New York to be like, hey, our federal like system has said he can't have anymore. And they're like, no, can't come here.
They won't.
But yeah, I'm sure they still took your tax dollars, right?
Oh, of course they did. The school took almost $9,000 in taxes a year. It was painful. Our taxes on our house in the middle of nowhere were like $16,000.
Jeez.
So moving here, I was like, oh, Florida's cheap. People are like, it's so expensive. I'm like, go live in upstate New York. You'll change your mind.
Yeah. It's, yeah. Oh man.
Wow.
That's hard. So and then he's your first child too. And you're learning all these things. Like, what a good job though you've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my girls have not had a single vaccine. They are incredibly healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they do catch something, which kids get sick, you know, people are like, oh, but they're on vaccine. It doesn't matter. They can still pick up a cold.
Yeah.
You know, they're down for a day and then they snap back, you know, but they've not needed, the only time they've been in a hospital is one of them broke her nose.
Oh.
They're little Taekwondo ninjas and she broke her nose. It's like, okay, we have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
But other than that,
were you tell me if it's too nosy, but were you in what state were you in when she broke her nose? And were you afraid? Because that is a big fear of mine. If my kid breaks their arm and it's like, are they up to date? It's like, I almost have heart palpitations before I even get there because I'm like, don't ask me, don't threaten me with CPS. Like, just don't ask any questions.
No, in New York, that is one of the first things. Are they up to date?
Yeah. It's like, doesn't matter.
So
it's a broken
it happened
bone.
here. Okay. We were here 2 weeks. My husband had gone back to New York. So he's a professor. He's also a holistic practitioner. He does both.
Okay.
He'd be cool to talk to too.
Yeah.
But he had gone back to finish his semester and her and her sister were jumping around Florida. The floors are hard tile everywhere.
Yeah.
She just face planted and I had to take all 3 kids to the emergency room. My husband, my poor son with his whole like trauma PTSD at a hospital. He's like, I want to go. And I'm like, you can't.
Yeah.
I took 3 kids. That was a journey, but they don't even ask. They don't care.
Yeah.
You know, I go to the doctors and, you know, I book them a doctor. They have to do their annual physical for school. And I ask things like I like even getting an exemption. They don't care. Do you vaccinate? No. Do you want shots? No. Like there's no pressure here.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's the way it should be. It's the parent's choice, you know?
Yeah. I this is not on topic. This is totally a tangent, but this is totally on brand for us. We go on tangents.
That's okay.
When my daughter was born, I was anti getting a pediatrician, which I know is maybe like if people are listening, there's like scandalous. Your kid hasn't been to the pediatrician, but she was born at home. We didn't take her until like she was like 3 weeks old. She was fine. Like if there was something up, as the mother, I would be the first one to be like, somebody help my kid. But long story short, her pediatrician, we like connected with him, and like a lot of our friends went to this guy, and he's a Christian guy, and he was like, hey, just so you know, God gave you, like I believe God gave you this child, didn't give it to me, didn't give it to the medical system, and you're responsible for her, and so whatever I can do to help you raise her, I'm here for you, but also she's your child, not mine. And which made my shoulders go, oh, okay, thank goodness. But also when I was there, he tried having us, he didn't force it. He was like, hey, like there's this form because you've refused some things we want you to sign. And I didn't know the form existed until I saw it. And so I did some research on it. And it basically, like, I mean, if you read the whole disclaimer, it's like, hey, if your kid gets any of the diseases that you denied the vaccine for, then CPS can come and take your kids because you are liable.
Negligent.
You were negligent. Yep. And I'm so grateful. Like, I'm just suspicious of everything, especially post 2020. I was like, am I forced to sign it? He was like, no, you're not forced to do anything. And he was like, he's very gracious about it, very kind. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not signing nothing. And then Dave, my husband, he was like, well, like you're being a little sharp, little sharp. And I'm like, I'm not signing nothing. Like, I don't need to sign it. I don't need to make an excuse to anybody about why I'm doing anything with my own child. Like, I have her best interest at heart. I love her the most. I've done the most work to get her here. Yes. But just as someone who's, you know, if anybody's listening, research that document first, because it's not just an Illinois thing. It's like a nationwide thing. So I just didn't know if you've ever experienced that. Probably not in Florida. I doubt they.
Yeah, I mean, New York, even going to the hospital, I had my girls and I didn't want the Hep B. So the hepatitis B vaccine, if you actually read the insert, and we're going down that road.
Do it. Do it.
We're here for it.
I can even show you a vaccine injury line. But anyway.
I would love that.
If you turn down the Hep B and vitamin K, they call CPS. And so I called CPS before I went into labor, and I just said, I have to have a C-section. I'm just letting you know they're going to call. And she's like, well, we'll only go after the religious parents that live out in the woods and don't see a doctor. And I was like, that's really judgy, because some of those are the healthiest kids ever.
It's discrimination.
They get there, you know?
Yeah.
but I did have a doctor who was on my team. And so, she, I had a nice paper trail, which was important to me in New York.
Yeah.
We went every year. She was pretty good. So, but yeah, they call CPS. And the hepatitis B vaccine, if you read the insert, protects 81%, I think it was 81% of the kids who get vaccinated within an hour from the mothers who have hepatitis B.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that kills me in New York is between 32 and 36 weeks, you have to get tested for all of your STDs, Hep B, and all of that. And it's negative. So I went to the doctor and I said, why are you forcing this on my child when I literally just had a test and I'm negative? She goes, well, husbands are promiscuous. And I was like, I'm huge. Like, there is nothing happening here. Nobody's touching me 38 weeks pregnant, but they require it. And it's like the lunacy to even think of the reasoning behind it blows my mind.
Wow.
So kids are just randomly getting this. And in Canada, they don't give it till 12 years old because it's spread through intercourse and needles and stuff. And I mean, I don't know babies that are shooting up heroin, but maybe they live in New York. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, all of it, if you really if we wanted to go down the whole oh yeah, babies get the eye goop on their eyes, the antibiotics because of chlamydia. It's like, okay,
you've tested me 3 times.
You've tested me, and also insulting. I've only been with my husband. Like, how dare you? Like, oh yeah, but guys are creeps. And it's like, okay, no,
not all of them.
Not all of them. Also, that's just not scientific at all. Oh
it's
man,
not.
Yeah.
Monetary gains. That's what it is.
Yeah.
The wealthier they are.
Well, my husband's severely allergic to erythromycin, and they just call it the eye drops. And then I looked into it and it's erythromycin, and I was like, well, there's a 50-50 chance this kid's going to be allergic. Why am I going to stick it in their eyeball?
Well, and also just so another little tidbit, this has nothing to do with eyes, but the midwife we used for my daughter's birth, we were talking about the vitamin K. She's like, yeah, but I will administer it if I feel like it's medically necessary, which in hindsight was a red flag. But anyways, I was like, yeah, but in the insert, it says, do not administer to any child under a year old. And she was like, what? And then she went home and read the insert and she's like, it sure does. And I'm like,
yeah,
you're a midwife. You should have read that already. Why am I telling you? I've never done this before. I'm a first time mom. What are you doing?
Right.
Anyways, okay. I'm so sorry. Tangent city, but it's been really nice. I really like it.
Let me add a little to that tangent.
Yes,
so I do also have religious exemptions. So if you go to my website, 3sproutsholistic.com, there is a little guide. It's kind of based out of New York, but we also immigrated here. And me and my husband did the religious exemption route because when you immigrate, they want you to get 16 shots in one visit.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, geez. In one visit.
In one visit.
Oh my gosh.
So the lawyer that helped us was disbarred because in North Carolina, they wanted him to surrender all of his clients' information to the state. And he's like, absolutely not. He served 10 days in jail for it and lost his license. He still doesn't care because he does these consults. But he gave me so much information. So when parents are in states, so if you go, you can type in vaccine exemptions per state. Some have philosophical, religious, medical. But if you are philosophical or religious, I'm happy to help you. I got the Bible memorized front to back, the Quran, whatever you need. Protect your babies, and I will help you. Just email me there. We have the guide, and I'm happy to read over letters. That's something I'm very passionate about. So if you need help, I'm here.
That's amazing. That's
amazing.
A great resource. We'll post that in the description.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything more about jabs before I want to go back into Irid? Okay.
Well, maybe. So I married her brother. I think he said he had 1 or 2 because he was the first. There were 7 kids, and he's number 2, and she's number 7. So by 7.
They gave up.
They gave up. He said he had 1 or 2. I had everything up till I think I was 15. And then I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And no one stopped me, which was great. But how, as far as with my daughter and son and her daughter, how do you, I guess, how much passes through, if that's a question that's even askable or measurable? Because I did heavy metal detox, cellular detox before babies. But I do notice my son, they say your firstborn gets your heaviest toxin load. And I do notice my son's under eyes are darker than my daughter's. He's a little more just sensitive to some stuff than she is. And I always just think, he takes after more of my family's traits versus my daughter takes after more their side.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. My son, obviously, I feel like, what kind of led to his vaccine injury was his toxin bucket was a little bit higher,
Yeah.
I grew up on the ocean eating a lot of seafood. I was probably filled with mercury.
Yeah.
My mother has a bunch of mercury. I do think that there is some stuff that passes down.
Because you assume my fresh baby's got a clean slate, but not really, not necessarily.
No. One of the harshest things when I got into this, one of my functional medicine friends, he said, and it burns, but it also is like important to hear. He said, there's so many people that are forcing their bodies to have babies when their bodies are not able to do it. They're going through IVF, they're taking all the medication. And he's like, and they're bringing these babies with these health issues into the gene pool, which is further keeping everybody from being healthy. And I was like, that's kind of rude. And he said, but think about it. He's like, if your body can't get pregnant, fix the problem. Don't take the medication.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's right, because then your body's gonna be healthier. And I know you said you detoxed a bit before you got pregnant and stuff. Like, I do think that gives the kid a better sleep. But I mean, the body can also heal. The liver regenerates every 7 years. So I think the mindset is important. Eat well, sleep well, think well. Keep yourself around good people, have a strong faith, and the body will take care of it.
Yeah. It's good, because I know we have a lot of moms too who, some of them were either fully jabbed themselves or, up to this point their kids were, and then hopefully, listen to the podcast. We've had some people reach out that they've listened to us and have like changed their mind a little. I was like, oh, don't listen to us. We're worms and we don't know what we're talking about. So that's why we have the people on that know what they're talking about.
But we do, because like I honestly have never met a generation of moms who research more.
Yeah.
Like I have not seen it kind of gives me goosebumps, because like I feel like we're finally, and it sounds so lame, I hate the term taking your power back, but like we're finally like taking authority back over our kids, and like no, this random doctor who sees them once a month, every 3 months or whatever, is not the authority on my kid. I am the authority on my kid, and I absolutely want the best for them. And like now this generation is of moms being like, okay, I'm gonna, like, once my kid goes to sleep, I'm gonna deep dive until 2:00 in the morning on this subject to become the expert, or like not even expert, just to educate myself. And if you ask questions and your medical staff belittles you or makes you feel like garbage or talks down to you, that's a red flag that like they don't actually care about you. They just want you to comply.
Yeah.
But
it is nice to hear, though.
Off my soapbox now. Sorry, I get
it's
so
nice
mad.
to hear that the body heals itself, and we know that. But I feel like it's nice for the listeners to hear, like, oh, just because your kid had this and this, it's not the end of their life. You just got to do some things to help it out, and then the body will take care of itself.
Yeah. And the kids heal so much quicker.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I mean, people need to know, like, whatever you did to your kid, there is healing, and you'll get there. The fear is probably my husband always says the reason women are so sick is because they live in fear. My husband, he eats, and if he listens to this, he enjoys his ice cream and doesn't exercise but I have more health issues, but it's because my mind is kind of holding me back from that, So I always say I need to think more like my husband, where I'm just let things go and be happy,
I love, I don't know if you've seen the reels on Instagram where people will just like paparazzi video their husbands eating an ice cream or just sitting there drinking coffee, looking out the window. And it's like, look at them over there, just sitting there, no anxiety, no worry, living their life. And I'm like, those fellas, they know how to just be.
They have different brains though. Like we have to in today's day and age, we have to differentiate that like male versus female are different. And like their brains are just different. Like they're worried. Like it's not that they're not worrying. They just have really different worries than we have. And that's a blessing, because then the whole spectrum is kind of covered for the most part of like
in your family.
Okay,
so eyes
sorry. Let's bring her back around. Okay, where do you want to go?
The other day my daughter loves to look in our eyes, because our whole family, my husband and I, my both kids have green eyes, and so she'll come up and she'll grab my face and she'll say, let me see your eyes. And then she is like, oh, you have green eyes like me. And the other day she goes, you have green eyes and now they're orange. And I was like, oh no, what's wrong? What's going on? But it's interesting that my daughter knew enough to say like, oh, your eyes are green and orange.
Where is the orange? Around your pupil?
Where is it orange?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like
so
a
that's
gold.
in your butt. So right around the pupil is your gut zone. Mm-hmm. Are you a sugar craver? Like, do you have a sweet tooth?
Yes.
Do you get tired after you eat sometimes?
Always.
Okay.
And it's crazy. I've done parasite cleanses. I've done mold cleanses. I've done cellular cleanses. And we've been working on my gut for like 12 years. I think we're peeling back the
onion, though. We're getting
it's a large onion.
Yeah.
It just takes time. I mean, and I've kind of been in this, my recent I'm obsessed with learning. So minerals, right?
Yep.
I have seen huge gains with people just having the right minerals too. Like chromium is really good for regulating blood sugar, but stress.
Yeah.
I ask a lot of women when their adrenals show up, which is kind of at the bottom here, when they're stressed, you're depleting some of these macro minerals, your calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. And then they're like, I need the chips. I need like something heavy carb, right?
Yeah.
And so the stress depletes those minerals and throws off our cravings. And then when we have these cravings for like a heavy carb, obviously we're going to feel kind of sluggish, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We get these fungal overgrowth. So your skin looks great. I'm guessing that you probably eat pretty well, but sometimes moms, the stress is a big part of it.
Yeah.
I've gone on this. My friend Becca she's like, drink coconut water. And I moved to Florida.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to start drinking coconut water because otherwise we're going to dehydrate over here. And in the last little while, I've noticed that my adrenals aren't as tanked. The lids have receded.
So you think the adrenal like cocktail recipes out there, they always have coconut water of some sort mixed.
I just drink coconut water.
Just straight by itself.
Water.
Okay.
Yeah. But my A1C actually, so your A1C for people who don't know is like your measure of your blood for 3 months.
Okay.
Your blood sugar, sorry. So mine was 5.6, which is kind of high, but it's still within the normal range. And I started drinking coconut water every day. And it went down to 4.8, which is like the very low end. So regulating my blood sugar, I had some insulin resistance. So, I'd feel tired after I ate and stuff like that. And just getting those minerals in, especially the potassium, at least for me, was really helpful. But sometimes and this is another thing for kids, taking a little bit of hair off the back of the head, sending it in for a hair tissue mineral analysis. If you go to holisticheal.com, you don't need a doctor to do it. So as parents, you can order it on your own.
Excellent information.
And I cut hair for a living, so just buzz a little higher up his head. And
there is a lady that runs it, Dr. Amy Yasko. She's been doing it. So she was doing this back when my son was like 2 years old. And you can opt for her notes for free. She'll ask what supplements you're using, but she'll tell you exactly what's off, what you need to take.
Okay.
Amazing.
So that's
We
something
should have her on the
I'd like to
podcast.
tell parents.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. She's brilliant. But that's something people can look at. If your minerals are off, like chromium being low, you're going to have issues regulating your blood sugar. Cobalt's precursor to B12, right?
Yeah.
Selenium and iodine are imperative for the thyroid. So you can look at minerals too and kind of see what's off for these children.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry. Before we get that, do you mind if I interrupt?
Yeah.
Where do you get the selenium? What was the first one? You also mentioned
iodine, chromium.
Chromium. Where would we get those? I mean, obviously it's probably depleted from the soils, but where do we get those now?
Yeah.
It's just supplementing?
Yeah, I mean,
or like a crap ton of a certain food?
Yeah, chromium is I want to say it's in meat. Some kids are really picky with meat. And a lot of times, to be completely honest, the reason they're kind of adverse to meat, I'm sorry if you guys are vegan or something.
No,
no, not at all.
I rub beef fat on my face, so.
Yeah. Would you say you rub beef fat on your face?
Yeah. I use beef tallow.
Okay, a little tidbit. People with blue eyes, beef tallow is the best thing for your skin. I don't know what it is, the blue eye type. What color are your eyes?
Mine are green.
Green. Okay. I'm curious. I want to see
where
both
does that
of
fall?
yours,
Back to
we should have sent our eyeballs to you before we started. Shoot.
So on the people that believe, you said brown or blue, where does green fall?
Yeah.
I know you said there's like a debate on it, but.
Okay, so the green is more of a mixed eye type, and I really think, and you'll see certain situations. I talk about my dad a lot. My dad, he was the unhealthiest eater in the world, like Burger King, McDonald's. Give me the carbs, give me the meat, but never ate a vegetable.
Yeah.
So, he had a heart attack 16 years ago, and he decided to go plant-based. Now that worked for him, but for the first time in this man's life, he started picking up fruits and vegetables, and his eyes were more like hazel green. And so the brown that was kind of wider started shrinking in towards the pupil, which is toxins leaving the body.
Okay.
So if you look at your eyes and they're like green all over, now I'm really curious to see them.
Yeah.
I just keep looking at my eyeballs of this.
Wait, I can't see it. Move it over. Are you zooming in? Oh, you're checking your eyes.
Yeah,
I'll
showing you a picture. I'll email you a picture of our eyeballs real quick.
But right around the pupil, that can either spread if there's more toxins or come in. So you having more of like a rusted orange color, regulating your blood sugar and even sometimes your gallbladder.
Yeah, let me see your eyeball.
My mom had a gallbladder.
Does it matter which eyeball or do you want both?
It doesn't matter. Either or.
Let's see. Okay.
But yeah, my dad's eyes are blue now.
What? You're kidding?
He was a mixed eye type. He addressed his liver, regulated his blood sugar, started eating healthy food. And I was like, you had blue eyes all this time?
Wow.
That's amazing. Okay, so then, but yours are brown. What color is your mom's?
Hers is mixed. She's got some green and her eyes were always brown. She quit smoking and now they're hazel.
Because the light's in your eye.
Now she's, okay. Little less.
Or look at the thing, but turn your, there you go.
There we go. Okay. This is the content everybody came for.
Yes.
Okay, so but yours are brown and brown. Okay, so if you were to say what is the optimal eye color, like what is like the color that you're like, yeah, you're gonna have less health issues, and okay, so
does everyone have their own
own
sets
spectrum?
Of things?
But like generationally, like if you look like my family's eye color has been like a point of pride because like we all have really like light green, pretty eyes. Like we've always been, but I noticed when I got sick, like, and I hit like rock bottom in 2020 and my health was terrible. I had like a beard of acne. I was super sick. My eyes were so dull. Yeah. And like, and then I look back at like family, like my family photos. I'm like, we've always had green, but they've just been like, they get lighter as you look back on photos. Like,
like every my son's generation eyes are like a limey, bright green. And I remember I was like, sometimes my eyes actually look kind of brown, but that makes sense that it's just
it's just
all the junk coming in.
It's just interesting generation. I'm thinking, but I don't know.
I would say, you know, I mean, I have noticed because I have people all over the world. I don't want to say the brown eyes, but maybe the people like more Indian, they have less health issues based on what I see with their eyes.
Do you think that's because they eat healthier mostly? Is that an assumption that like I feel like they're just more like
some places?
Because like all of my friends who are Indian, I'm just saying like they have way more herbs and spices in their life than I see in like the average white family.
It's just salt, pepper.
Yeah, salt, pepper,
garlic, potatoes.
That's it. Like
my husband has this joke. So he's from Trinidad, but originally they're from India.
Okay.
And he says all the supplements are just curry in a capsule. He said they basically took like the cumin and the coriander and put it in a capsule because they're realizing these things are anti-parasitic, antifungal. But I mean, you think about the amount of spice they eat, what they put in, like, and the other thing is they eat a variety of things. So having more foods, like I read somewhere like up to 50 different fruits and vegetables a week is really important to keep your microbiome healthy. And they eat tons. I mean, even climate wise, they can grow stuff all year long, you know, or if you're in the north, it's like apples and potatoes, you know? So they eat more of a variety of fruits and veggies, and, you know, they eat, and it's also common for them to do parasite cleansing, but the brown eyes, I would say the healthiest people have more of a white sclera. So there is one doctor, and this is where it's like, it's so individual. Dr. Darren Schmidt, he's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's a fantastic functional medicine doctor. And I saw him at a conference and I just couldn't stop staring at him. And he's like, this is awkward. And I was like, can I take a picture of your eye? Like his eyes were so pristine, healthy, blue. His sclera was so white. And I was like, these are the healthiest eyes I've ever seen. So I started asking him, what do you eat? And he's like, I've been carnivore. So I was like, because when you study iridology, there's like kind of like a vegan gang, you know, the Dr. Robert Morrison, it works for some people, but I don't think it works for everybody. Depending on your digestive health, your liver, your digestive enzymes, like some people can't eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. So it kind of threw me for a loop because I'm like, when you study iridology, everybody's kind of pro-vegan. And then here I am seeing this carnivore and I'm like, wow, there's no acidity in his gut. Like, and even, you know, I think microbiome, he's eating the same thing every day for like 15 years.
It's not a variety of stuff.
That worked for him. Right. And I've seen people that are vegan and their eyes are very acidic. So there's a lot of like kind of like a rust and like weakness showing up in their eyes, or a lot of inflammation. So a lot of white fibers. But then I see people that are plant-based and they're healthy. So it really comes down to the individual.
Is it true that the gold color can lead to like it can determine like pre-diabetes?
So when you look at a blue eye type and there's like white fibers, over time, those white fibers, if they're not addressed, which is inflammation, mucus, stagnant lymph, that can become more yellow. And that yellow kind of makes it look like a golden eye. And those people definitely, I would say at that point, they're not sweating well, they're eating really bad foods. You know, and I do notice they get more gold. Like they're like, oh, look at my beautiful eyes. And I'm like, do you see what I see?
What do you tell your clients that have a sweating problem and that like that gold ring? Like, is it totally individualized? Obviously it probably is, but like, is there like a basic, like, hey, do X, Y, and Z to kick you off?
Or is it that they can't sweat or they're just not moving to sweat?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, you know, I work with kids too. So for kids, I mean, and, you know, some people postpartum, if we can, jumping on a trampoline is really good. Like gets the lymph going and it helps to promote better sweat for most moms because we need some time to relax. A hot bath, right? Throw in some Epsom salt, maybe a bit of bentonite clay. And kids too. You can get kids in the tub, you know, no kids say no to that. Swimming, shockingly, actually, you might not feel it, but swimming is a great way to sweat as well. The ocean would be better than, a chlorine pool, but just shower after and you're good.
Yeah.
But just that, even people say like the dry brushing is like a big thing. Your lymph sits right under your skin. So even just petting yourself, think of like the pressure of how you'd pet a cat. Gently press from your hands to your armpits, your feet towards your groin. And that can help promote better circulation and drainage too. For the moms that have had C-sections or anybody with like long scars, sometimes that cuts through the lymph nodes and that can actually impair the ability to sweat.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I've had 3 C-sections, unfortunately. I labored forever with all of them, but they never came out.
Yeah.
But I had to go for like lymphatic drainage. So there's a place called Chickley Institute, CHIKLY, and they will show you, especially in the United States, people that are kind of trained to correct after surgery, the lymph flow. So 3 C-sections, instead of things draining into my groin, they were going up around my back. I had all this tension here and I couldn't sweat because your lymph nodes actually sit right above your collarbone. And that's where they filter into your blood and get a lot of toxins out. So a lot of blue eye type have this. They'll have a lot of tension in their neck, like a lot of sinus issues. And sometimes it's actually the lymph. So your son's eyes are green?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm really curious.
I know. I'll send a picture later.
Yeah, I'm going to need all the eyes. But sometimes even just like massaging this area and helping to get it flowing, but seeing a lymphatic drainage specialist can help to get the toxins flowing out of the skin. And that does help to sweat better. I mean, if people have the means of going into a sauna or exercising, that works too, but that's not something everybody has.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also in my mind, maybe I'm totally wrong, but like the sauna is awesome, but also like right now it's going into summer. Like we have a sauna outside, like go outside. And I know it's like sweating is a problem. It's like, okay, then take it easy and like work on your lymph outside. Like take your shoes off, ground for a little bit, sit in the sun, like get something flowing, drink some water and just take it easy. Just come in and out as much as you can,
Exactly.
Because a lot of the times, we're supplementing like, a selenium supplement, we're supplementing what was supposed to be in our soil already. Like we have to and so like draining our lymph and grounding, getting, connected more to, it sounds woo, the natural energy of the earth, but it's true. It's like we make it like a practice, but like it's what we're supposed to be doing. We're just supplementing what we're supposed to already have. Like sauna, we're supposed to kind of be outside, working the land, being active, and it's just funny how like we have all these like red lights, like, hey, how about just wake up a little earlier and put your eyes in the sun? It's like, it's actually way cheaper than buying, like if it's not in the budget, like you don't have to buy everything because it can get overwhelming in the holistic field. It's like, oh my gosh, this new thing and now I have to buy it. And oh my gosh, like we don't have the funds for it.
And that stress response is not helpful either.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, is the non-toxic lifestyle stressing you out more than it's helping? Because like every single supplement, everything has, maybe not all supplements, but like, sauna, red light, like it can all be done an alternative free way. It just might not be as like potent or like direct, and it might cause you might have to do a little extra in time rather than spend the finances. So I hope that it encourages somebody listening that like, hey, there's always going to be a new thing. There's always going to be a new thing that'll make you the absolute best. Yeah. Just do the best you can with what you have. But
but getting outside, I think, and for kids too, I mean, you think about when they go outside, they're so calm. When they come home, and that grounding in the sun. And, my son, part of the autism or whatever, his sleep sucked. There'd be days where he'd randomly wake up at 3:00, but we get out every morning. We go out at sunset. We go out on our little golf cart in the community. We watch the sunset. They play at the playground. And I'm telling you, he sleeps like 10 hours straight. There's no waking up anymore. And that's been a huge blessing. And people don't understand the value of just getting outside. Yeah. That's your best red light, unless you live in New York where it never shines.
So then as like, I know we're kind of bouncing around a lot and we appreciate everybody for listening, and it's our fault because we hear a thing and it triggers a thought. But you were in special education and then your son got vaccine injured and then an autism diagnosis. How did that change how you saw or how you thought about the kids who you were teaching? Like, because like in my mind, before I actually got awakened to this thing, it's like, man, you just drew the short end of the stick. But it's like, how many of these kids are actually like their bucket?
It's, I think the most painful thing is seeing what people feed their children. You know, I mean, in Florida, your lunches are free, and they're free because they are horrible. And the parents, you know, for me, it's like, I mean, I didn't really question the vaccines back then. I trusted my doctor, but I questioned everything else. So, you know, I was making my own baby food. I made sure I was nursing for 2 years. Like we did everything right nutrition wise from the beginning, except not knowing he had celiac. And I feel like that was something like you obsess with as a parent. And I feel like there's a big disconnect. And this is where I could go on a tangent of mothers getting back into their natural role of taking care of their kids is important. Because when you're juggling a full-time career, you have your kids in school, you're trying to take care of your kids, clean the house, cook, keep your husband happy, all this stuff. We lose sight of actually finding time to take care of our kids and research these things properly. Nobody questions red dye. Nobody questions the glyphosate in all of our food. And these kids are actually sick. They're not autistic. They're suffering. You know, my son just went through a bout of PANDAS, which, you know, it's pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric syndrome after strep. He had no symptoms, but I was just like, please just check him for strep. He tested for strep because he was having a lot of like OCD. He has these beautiful drawings and they were just lines. Like he kind of stopped being able to draw, very aggressive. And, you know, I have a friend and her brother is in like a home, like a full-time home. And he has a lot of these symptoms. And I'm like, you know, how do you talk to these parents and say, maybe it's strep, you know, you take 10 days. We did amoxicillin, but we were desperate because he was very violent and like literally 360 in like 24 hours. Wow. And now we're kind of supporting with the natural route. But then that was his first time on antibiotics in 11 years. So we're doing okay. But you know, it's sad to see how many of these kids are actually suffering from heavy metal toxicity, leaky gut, eating foods that they really couldn't like respond well to, the red dyes and everything. And then the parents are medicating the kids to try and solve these issues when that's not the solution. It's just like a Band-Aid. Like I had so many students on Ritalin and you can't even get to them. They're on Ritalin and they're calm, which is convenient for the parent. They'll sit and play video games for hours so that the parents can go do their own thing, like cook and clean and all that stuff, which I get we need to do. It's, you know, there's a triangle that somebody showed me early on. It's a clean house, happy kids. What was the other one? And I'm forgetting. Clean house, happy kids, and you can't have all of them. Happy life. It's a balancing act, and we're never going to have it all. Something has to go. And you know, it's a lot. This is like if we could all not have such an expensive economy and go back to being moms and taking care of our, it's easier. You know, you can keep an eye on your kids and what they eat and make your sourdough bread at home.
I'm trying to get Irene, like they've been renovating an RV for the last couple of years, like, and I want them to just move on to our property. So, cause like, I also don't think we're supposed to live life in isolation. Like like we're supposed to actually have like our family be really close by, and you're not supposed to do motherhood by yourself. And like, it's not supposed to be as lonely as it's gotten. And like, it's not supposed to be so isolated. And it's different if like, you know, there's unhealthy family members, you don't want them, you know, wrecking the
ecosystem.
Happiness. The ecosystem. But like, I just think about like us, I'm like, okay, like we have this podcast, and if we're thriving on the social media side, just know that like my kid has watched way more TV than I would like, because like I'm the editor and there's only so much I can do in one day. And that probably also my house is a disaster. And when I say a disaster, I mean an actual, like not like those social media influencers, just like, oh my gosh, ignore the mess. And there's like one bowl on the counter. And I'm like, no, like there's like bowls and dishes and pans.
But, something's got to go. You know, and some of the, I have a friend down the street, her house is a train wreck. I know she won't mind me saying this, but her kids are thriving. You know, and she's like, I can't do it both. One had to go and it's not my kids, you know? This inability to kind of be in, like my family's all in Canada, so it's been hard doing it on my own. My best friend just moved down the street, thank God. Good. But you know, she's the one that took my kids for this podcast. Good. But just that feeling of having a community, like people need that, and mothers need to stop judging each other. I have a kid with autism. You know, sometimes he goes out and he claps his hands and he says weird things, or he stares at people. You know, and instead of mother meeting me with sympathy or tolerance, they're judging me, and their kids are seeing that too. So then my son's going to be further isolated. Their kids are never going to learn to interact with somebody that's different. And that's really hard too, but that's not how a village works, you know? So we need to be patient and accepting and, you know, smile at another mother out there. Solidarity. We're all suffering. Our houses are all a mess. Our laundry's piled really high. We're folded and just sitting on our bed, and we sleep with it for 3 days.
Relatable. Oh my gosh. I've loved this conversation. You're such an easy person to talk to.
Same to you guys. This is awesome.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to touch on with iridology or your story or anything?
Well, I know people are probably going to have a lot of questions about eyes.
Yeah.
So if you go on my Instagram, it's 3 Sprouts Holistic. I have something I call it See You Sunday. So people can post their eyes, and between life, I comment on 20 every Sunday, and I have them all saved to a highlight. So there's 3 of them now, which there's 100 in each highlight. So there's a lot.
Okay.
But I tell people about their eyes, not everything, but tidbits,
Yeah.
So if people are really wanting to learn more, they can spend some time going through that, because you will learn how to assess your own eyes. On my website, I do have courses. So I have Iridology 101. I have one for women, kids, sclerology. So if people really want to have something more solid with the charts and stuff, I do have that on there.
Yeah.
And I do consults. I'm booked a ways out. I'm going to start adding more now that summer's here. My husband was in New York. So once I can actually sit down and schedule things with him and his crazy schedule, I will add more consults, but it is booking a couple months out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay.
But yeah.
Good for you.
I'm here. I love talking about eyes. I want everybody to find a love for it, because it's so easy. It's so helpful, and you can stay ahead of your health really just staring at yourself and your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're supposed to look them in the eyeballs, we're we don't look enough in people's eyeballs anymore. But I've also noticed over the last couple of years, I feel like people's eyes, and I don't know if it's from listening to your podcast, but I feel like even before, people's eyes are just way more red.
Yes.
And it's way more than I ever used to notice.
There's so many lines.
It's so many, including myself. And I feel like we eat really well, but also the environment is just toxic in general. But I'm it's just everybody, I'm out in public on the cashier. I'm why are your eyes bloodshot? Are you sick? And then it's put Visine. And it's oh, what are you doing?
You should have a little chart on your phone so you can pull it up at the cash and be is that your liver? Is that your kidneys? What's going on there?
Yeah. I'm kind of known for I don't do small talk super well, so usually the conversation always goes to poop. So
we were at a Bible study for the first time where we only knew the host really, and I think 10 minutes in she starts talking about parasites, and the whole Bible study derailed to poop. It was really funny. It was great. It was a great day.
But when something changes your life, and you're hey, I did not realize I could feel good until I did X, Y, and Z. I didn't realize my anxiety and all the busyness in my head actually dulled a lot. It got really quiet when I came into more of a homeostasis within my body. So when I don't want to gatekeep, I'm just hey, get them worms out your butt. Get them. All right, so then what's the number one on the eye, what's the number one sign of parasites that you're oh, wait, what? You got an itchy booty hole? What?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, and there is, we can't really diagnose anything. So when people start with me, they have a chart. So think of, parasite symptoms, itchy butthole, sugar cravings, tight neck and shoulders, eye floaters, hard time sleeping, irritability, mood swings, kind of feeling jittery. There's a lot of symptoms coming around the full moon. You're going to feel really off, but the radicularis, so it looks like rays of sunshine kind of engraved in the iris. Those can show up. And then if people have brown, darker around their pupil, that's usually toxins in the bowel too. So those are 2 things that I look for. If they have the radicularis, I question the symptoms of parasites, and more often than not, it's high. This originally was actually discovered. The farmers would look at their livestock and look for these and say that one needs parasite cleanse. It does take a while for it to go away. And that's why symptoms are also really important to look at. But those rays of sun can go all the way to the edges of the iris, and then they can start kind of fading in and softening as the bowel gets, rid of these critters. So, for kids, people think, I don't live in a third world country. Everybody gets parasites.
Yeah.
Everybody. My vegan mother, who's the healthiest person in the world, does cartwheels at 60.
Oh my goodness.
She's going to kill me for saying this, but I was Mom, you got parasites. No, I don't. I eat spinach. It's organic. I'm you have parasites. She started her cleanse, and it took 18 months for them to get out of her.
Oh my goodness.
She had an army in there.
Yeah.
But everybody gets them. You stand in water, live your life, but cleanse regularly. Unless you're in India, eat Indian food. Yeah. Or go, get some spicy food every once in a while. It's good for you.
See?
Yeah. I eat some spicy. You have a psychopathic spice tolerance.
My family,
I don't understand it.
I'm from New Mexico, and my family are all Mexican and Spanish. And so everything has peppers on it. And my husband will come and visit, my Irish Caucasian husband. And he's what? This is why you have gut issues. I'm this is probably the only thing that has kept me alive all these years. And my dad will still say it.
That's actually a great
she said
point.
yes. But
That's
my dad will say, if you're like, because my dad will eat ghost peppers, he'll drop it and he's great. He's a level way far away from me.
Wow.
But he'll tell you, I haven't had a cold in 30 years. And like, he's in his 60s. And when he got the thing, it only lasted a couple days and then went away. And he's blasting his system with ghost pepper. So.
Yeah, my in-laws are from Trinidad, and they cook everything has spice in it. The turmeric, the ginger, the garlic, the cayenne pepper. And I mean, they're 75. They look amazing. They're moving well, you know.
Yeah.
I forget that they're like 75. They're 10 years into the retirement. I forget because, you know, they eat. They're very strict with what they eat. Yeah. But those spices are non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I have a bunch of cayenne peppers out in my garden right now, like growing, because I'm like,
yay.
I like the spice, but like I am Caucasian and like I grew up with like sauerkraut and dumplings. That was my upbringing, and mashed potatoes. Yeah. So like I'm trying to adjust to it, but we do a lot of turmeric lattes and all sorts of stuff like that.
But I go to New Mexico and they, like the state question is red or green. It's like, do you want red chili or green chili? And then if you don't want chili, you have to say it or they're just going to automatically throw green on there.
That's funny.
So it's great. It's a great time.
She'll make you some chili sometime.
Yeah.
It hurts. or maybe it's just me. I don't know.
But so back on the minerals, is there, or anything, is there something for someone who hasn't tested and just wants to get like a jump start, is there anything you recommend, like a mineral or to get back to, well, not purchasing too many supplements, but minerals, it can be just a pinch of salt. But what do you recommend as a baseline? Start this.
So, I love Youngevity, Youngevity. You can find the links on my website. Dr. Wallach had created, it's called Tangy Tangerine in 1992, which when I say that, I'm like, that was a couple of years ago. I'm not that old, but it was a long time ago, 30 years ago. And it has all 90 essential nutrients. So it has all of your trace minerals, your big minerals, your prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, everything you need. So you can kind of set it and forget it. Is my body getting everything it needs? And they have one called, it's a kid's toddy. So it's a liquid, you put it in the fridge, but my kids will literally shake it, put the cap full into water, and then drink it like juice. It actually tastes like juice. The Tangy Tangerine tastes like orange juice. So it's easy to get in. My kids make popsicles in the summer. So they make Tangy Tangerine popsicles. But it's just a nice way, you know, I mean, the reality is I'm not a big fan of everybody needs to take a bunch of supplements, but with what they're spraying us in the air, what we're missing in our soil, like we're exposed to so much that the best thing we can do is just have all of our essential nutrients, you know, and that's what's going to keep our immune system strong because we're depleted of so much, the stress too, you know? So getting that in is important, but Youngevity, the Tangy Tangerine or the kids toddy.
Okay. Awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for your time,
Nichole. Thank you for talking with us.
Send me your eyes.
Send me your eyes.
She's going to email them over.
I took a random photo, but like the lighting's bad, so we'll do it in better lighting because I'm assuming that's important, right? Oh, yes,
People ask, how do you get pictures of your eyes? So you have a flashlight.
Okay.
And you have a camera. So pretend this is the camera. So you kind of want to shine it where you can see the details of the iris, okay?
Okay.
So I'm not doing the best job. This flashlight kind of sucks, but you know, if you look like this and the flashlight's like right here, it's going to show all the details. And when people get the sclera, I do like the top, the bottom, and then I open wide side to side. So it's a total of 10 photos, 2 iris, top, bottom, left, right. You know, of the sclera. So that's 10 photos each. And I always tell people, send me like 50. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what we should do? And you could totally just shut this down because it's totally, you don't have to. I am not opposed to like a live reading, which sounds very like psychic but like, you know, like, I mean, if you're comfortable, like we send your photos, you're like, okay, everybody on our audience, listen to like the things that are going on and we can be like, like that's a struggle.
I'll preface it with, if there's anything major, I'll talk to you about it in case, you know, but if you're okay talking about poop, we'll be fine.
Love it. We love talking about poop.
We love it. We're like, it's because we're, you know, I grew up with chronic diarrhea and I thought it was normal and I didn't know it wasn't normal until I went to a chiropractor and she was like, oh yeah, your ileocecal valve is like way open. And she adjusted it and it freaking hurt. And then I was like, I'm pooping normal for the first time ever at 21.
Yeah.
Oh
and
my gosh.
like, you just don't know until somebody has the guts to be like, hey, how you dumps? Like what texture, what color? Are they floating? Are they sinking? What's going on? You know, so we're hoping to, you know.
Yeah. Send me your eyes. I'm down for that.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your work and, having this conversation with us. We really appreciate you. And it's been a really fun interview.
Yeah. And we'll put all the links to your website and your courses and everything in our description box.
Yeah.
Sounds good. If you need anything, let me know. I'm here. I'm looking at eyes anytime.
Awesome.
You both have homework. Okay.
Yes.
Yay.
Okay. We will see you next time.
Take care.
Thanks for being with us today. Follow us on Instagram at underthesun_podcast. We'd love to meet you. Please help us out by subscribing on YouTube and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time. Please remember this information is made available to you for informational and educational purposes only. It is in no way a substitute for medical advice.